field. Safe to say we don't all agree on all the issues here, but I am encouraged by the shared consensus that privacy is such a foundational principle for sound payment systems. Data breaches and data arbitrage pose inherent and underappreciated risks to consumers, and we do need a new architecture to protect personally identifiable information, and Congress needs to set clear parameters on what data can be collected or transferred. We also need to preserve what has worked so well for so long with the U.S. dollar. Cash is an incredibly important tool, and the features of it are alluded to by Mr. French Hill when he was talking about a system that could work for banks and for individuals. The U.S. dollar, if I exchange it, I don't have to go to a bank. I can transfer it between any one person. It's recognized as legal tender throughout the United States. And I don't necessarily have to share all kinds of personally identifiable information when I get it. Some people hate that. But the reality is when you go to a bank, our system of laws requires the bank to know all sorts of things and, frankly, to spy on all their customers in order to continue to be permitted to operate. And they do that largely to keep us safe and to protect us from crimes and things like that. But there is this system of cash that's still permissible for peer-to-peer. So as we talked about blockchain, I don't think everyone would agree in terms of where we're at with blockchain or crypto-based assets, but I think it's largely a matter of whether it's understood or rightly understood, in my opinion, because there's a fear that there's all this abuse. There's been some fraud in the crypto space, and rather the solution isn't to just avoid that space altogether, it's the exact opposite. It's to provide regulatory certainty and legislative clarity that does not exist currently. Blockchain broadly protects personally identifiable information, and done correctly, it eliminates or can eliminate intermediaries, true distributed ledger technology. So how could we do this? It's not a partisan issue, as I said. I've got co-sponsors for legislation that include people who support Bernie Sanders and co-sponsors who support Donald Trump, co-sponsors from the North, South, East, and West, Republicans and Democrats. The real issue is whether we will confront the innovator's dilemma. Will we continue the broken status quo that protects incumbents at all costs, or will we embrace innovation that will inherently disrupt the current system? When confronted with this opportunity in the 1990s, Congress got it right and the internet flourished. Congress did not try to understand everything about the architecture of the internet, and clearly, anytime there's a hearing about the topic, Congress still does not understand everything about the internet. In fact, no one has yet envisioned all the use cases for the internet or internet technology. So how does all this relate to payments? Innovators in payment systems are flourishing, but unfortunately, they're often launching projects outside of the United States, not to avoid our regulations, but to find legislative clarity in places like Switzerland or Singapore. So will we unleash the power of our innovative economy? Will we provide legislative certainty where it is absent with bills like the Bipartisan Token Taxonomy Act? Will we finally address the foundational problem of privacy? And finally, will we allow all Americans to interact freely and privately without intermediaries that collect, monetize, and often compromise our data? They slow the payment system, charge fees, and do make banking less accessible to some people. So I thank you for talking about this. And Mr. Ahmed, perhaps as the bridge between the old economy and the new economy, what are your thoughts on the framework that I've laid out here?
Certainly, no, I completely understand the framework and understand the need for anonymity, and I think it's the cryptography aspect of cryptocurrencies or payment solutions that leverage the blockchain that really enables that. And I think you see that in varying degrees, as I mentioned with tokenization technology, reducing the amount of actors that have access to sensitive financial information. So I think it's certainly something that people demand. I think it's certainly something that there's technological fixes for, but as you also acknowledged, there are kind of real concerns from a government perspective about terrorist financing or money laundering, and figuring out a balance between those two and how to resolve those, I think, is the key question.
Yeah, good points, and I think I'm encouraged by things like the technology on a distributed ledger that lets you follow it. So you do have privacy, but you don't truly have secrecy. I mean, you have a much more transparent system with a distributed ledger than you have with cash. And so far, I haven't heard calls to eliminate cash, thankfully. My time's expired. Thank you all.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman.